There are actually 5 steps and the camera is the third one. The first one costs nothing and the second one will outlive any camera you buy. I shoot around a full-time job and I still got the order wrong. I got this body first and then I got for a fast lens to justify it. I also got this flash new and I used it like twice. And this filter on the other hand costs a fraction of everything else, but still helps me way more in my photography. So if you're about to buy your first setup, this is the drawer that you need to avoid. Some of it was a good buy, but some of it wasn't. Mainly because I got it at the wrong time. So stay tuned. Alright, let's go straight into step 1, because step 1 is the one that costs nothing, and that is deciding what do you want to shoot. The camera that you will get will vary completely if you're planning to do, for example, wildlife photography, as compared to taking pictures of your kids, or if you want to do street photography. I fall into this problem, and what tends to happen is that people want the latest and greatest, and then, of course, this type of cameras solve lots of problems that you don't have, so you start looking for problems to get this camera to solve them. I myself was not really sure if I wanted to get an APS-C camera, and when I decided to do so, I went for the A6700, which is the camera that I'm using to shoot this video. But to be completely honest, I think I could have gotten something else. In fact, I think I could have gotten an older but full-frame camera, because I do tend to shoot in low light sometimes, especially here. Thankfully I have a light which compensates, but I started with the camera. I wanted to have the latest and then I started inventing problems. One of the problems I started to try to compensate for actually brings me to point number 2, which is your lens. But before going into that, let me introduce myself. My name is Cesar. I'm a photographer, a content creator, a product manager at a tech company, and also an introvert. So I approach photography a little bit different. Instead of treating it like a full-time pursuit, I actually try to build systems around it so it fits around a day job and real life. Now let's go into step 2. And step 2 is go for a lens, which is kind of like the first real step, because in terms of gear, I would start from the lens because this will pretty much outlive any camera you buy. And if you, for example, start with the aims of starting with a simple camera and eventually go to full frame, in some cases, depending on what you're doing, it may be better to already start getting those full frame lenses. Why? Because if you move over to full frame and you have APS-C lenses, basically what's going to happen is that you're going to use those APS-C lenses on a full frame camera, which will work, so the camera will turn on, the camera will take pictures, but you will be misusing them. Basically because the sensor, the big sensor of full frame, will not be taken advantage of, and you would only use it in crop mode, which originally I thought it's okay, I don't mind, because it will be the same as using my camera right now since it's a bit cropped compared to full frame. But no, that is not exactly how it works. Actually, when you're using a full frame camera and you're using an APS-C lens there, yes, you're cropping, but you're not only cropping and getting an equal image as an APS-C, you're actually losing on the megapixels that the camera has, therefore actually reducing the quality of images that you're gonna get from your camera. And on top of the fact that, to be completely honest, I've been in a situation where I had to sell lenses, and it's always a hassle. You have to put them out on the internet, and then you have to meet someone at a shady place sometimes, and then the whole thing, it's just a pain in the butt. So I actually would try to avoid that situation, but just directly, if you know that you are eventually going to upgrade to a bigger camera in terms of the sensor size, maybe just go directly for those type of lenses. If you go from APS-C to full frame, keep in mind that you're also going to lose on the possibilities of getting many types of different lenses, because you will just find more lenses when you're shooting APS-C. Another important point about deciding on the lens first is that depending on the type of lens that you want, you will pretty much narrow it down to specific mounts. So if you're starting in photography and you have no clue about which type of camera you get in terms of brands, once you know which lens you want in terms of types of picture that it's easier for you to understand, basically you will narrow it down to the mount. And the mount is super important, because once you know which mount you want, then the camera body decision will just pretty much fall into place. Which brings me to step number 3, which is picking the camera body. And here is where I would say the meat of the video is, just because most people actually start from the camera body. And I'm not only not telling you to pick it second, but actually to pick it third, and not only to pick it once you know which mount you want. And by mount, if you have no clue about what this is, it's just basically the type of connection of the lens with the camera. I was about to show a camera, but I just realized it using it. So basically, when you decide a lens, and let's say you want to, I want to use my example 7.5 lens from TT Artisan, which is a quite cheap lens, to be honest. It's very nice, it's very good, and this is a very specific lens. And I would have gotten this, for example, if I wanted to shoot skateboarding, especially if you want to have that fisheye lens skateboarding look from the 90s or early 2000s. If I would have started from, I want to shoot that kind of thing, I would have ended up in a lens something like this, where my mount would have been, for example, Sony. And the trick is here to pick, especially if you're starting with photography, remember, this is very important. This video is about you starting photography, and from that point on you will grow. So after you pick the mount, my recommendation would be to actually pick the cheapest body that you can get in order to run that mount. This mainly because, in the same line of what I mentioned before, you are gonna outgrow this because you are gonna learn more and more photography. But the reason you got this is probably not gonna change that much. And if you get a high enough quality lens, that lens will keep its value for so long. And switching a camera body is just gonna be cheaper for you. Here's a little bit where my product manager brain turns on. And that is that if you are working with uncertainty, you basically have to go with the decision that's going to be the cheapest to undo. Just so that every step you take, you learn something, but it's also not a high burden on you and you don't feel like you're digging a hole for yourself. All right, hear me out. Everything so far has been about what you buy and in which order do you buy it. The next couple of steps are going to be about whether you're using your gear a year from now. So the next step is about reliability and making sure that you can use your camera in different scenarios. In my case, what I would recommend here is to go for filters and to go for accessories that can make your shooting experience a bit better. And how do filters make your shooting experience better? Well, specifically if you're using an ND filter, that will just give you so much more options when you are shooting outside and it's super bright. And you still want to keep your aperture wide open. I've talked about it many times in other videos. These type of filters are like sunglasses for your lenses, and I keep one on my lens pretty much all the time, especially when I'm shooting video and especially when I'm shooting outside. So if you're doing any of that, then a filter will really help. Another case in which these filters help when you are doing photography specifically is when you are doing long exposure photography. So if you just started and are wondering what long exposure photography is, basically if you have seen photos where the water seems silky smooth, then that's probably a long exposure photo. Or where you have seen photos of a street in the middle of the night where the lights of the cars just seem never ending on the road, well, that's also a long exposure photo. If you want to learn this, then especially when doing it during the day, you will need an ND filter. And another accessory that has helped me a lot when using my camera is a fan. Basically, when I'm shooting video like what I'm doing right now, when I do longer takes, the camera that I ended up buying tends to overheat. I really like the quality of video that this camera produces, but this is one of the downsides of picking first the camera body than what you really wanted to use it for. If I knew that I wanted to do more video, then I would have gotten, for example, an FX30, or if I really wanted to spend more money, an FX3. But in my case, I didn't, so I had to compensate for my choices. In my case, I use a filter on the camera every time that I'm shooting video, and that pretty much makes my camera not overheat at all. So if you're doubting if you go for the X6700 or the FX30 or the equivalent, then have a look at overheating, because this has happened more often than not in pretty much every camera that I've ever had. It is around this time also where I would, for example, start getting tripods or mounts or something to put your camera on when you're shooting. Call it a tripod, a monopod, whatever. Basically, because if you're learning photography, you're most likely going to be handheld most of the time. I've met lots of people that start getting the tripod pretty much right off the bat. And well, what this makes is, yes, you have a place to put your camera and that it's more stable and all, but you also have way more things to take out every time that you want to go out and take pictures. So I try to keep it light, but around this time, after you've used your camera for a while, you know which lenses you want, you have the accessories that will make you be more flexible, let's say, then I will get a tripod. And again, I want to mention one more time, this all depends on the type of photography you're doing. Because if you're doing long exposure photography, I would say get a tripod even earlier, because long exposure photography really benefits from you being stable and don't trust your hands. And this brings me to step 5, which is basically the specialty thing. This is the part in which you would be getting the cherry on top. Things that help you with aesthetics and things that are maybe not very beginnery, you know? Something like a black mist filter, for example. If you're new to photography, the words that just came out of my mouth probably make no sense. What is a black mist filter? Well, a black mist filter is this kind of filters that you put on your camera and it makes it look a little bit fuzzy, that it looks like you're recording a memory or something like that. It's great, it makes it look cool, but if you're new to photography, you are learning. You are learning the concepts. You can fake this in post-production. It's not going to be the same, but you can fake it. You first need to know if you really like this look before you can commit to actually getting the filter. This is just one example. If you're shooting video and want to get exciting angles, then you would get something like this, a magic arm, where you can just put the camera, put it somewhere else and have a weird angle. But that is, again, a little bit more aesthetic, right? This is not something you would get for learning photography or videography. And another thing that I would get last when learning photography, in my case, would be a flash. Actually, some cameras, like the Fujifilm X100VI, already come with a flash. So that's a bonus. You don't have to really buy a flash. And if you really want to get a higher and more potent flash, then you can do it. But if you pick something else, then I would get the flash last, because this is, in my opinion, also a bit more for aesthetics, especially if you want to take pictures in broad daylight with flash, which is kind of like a style that's coming out nowadays, then yeah, it's aesthetic. And on the other hand, if you're planning to do wedding photography, for which I don't think that you're a beginner, then a flash will be more needed. So it really depends. What is your journey and what do you plan to use the camera for? Or one of these lights, if you're doing video. This one's a little bit broken actually. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that these lights help when you are in a scenario where you don't have lots of light, like I am right now, but this is on purpose. I black out the windows, but most of the time you will actually have a window for if you're shooting video, or the streets when you're shooting photos. So to learn, you don't necessarily need all of this. Wait a little bit to get all of this because you need to nail the basics first. So those are the 5 steps, and if you're really wondering which camera body specifically to buy, especially if you're wondering if you should go for full frame or for APS-C, then I recommend you to watch this video over here, because over there I talked a bit about why I picked APS-C and why maybe full frame is not for you. It all depends on what you want to do, and I hope it helps. Thank you very much. See you in the next one. What else? What else am I? Gets turned on? No, that sounds weird. Take pictures in broad daylight. Deadlight?